Zoom. Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our second meeting of March at West Perth Municipal Council. Just before we get started with our meeting, I would ask council and our guests, if they so wish, will take a moment of reflection. Thank you. So we do have a fairly lengthy agenda tonight, as you well know. That's why we're kind of meeting at 6:15 instead of our usual 7. And I realized that it was probably rushed for a few people here. A couple of things on the agenda. The delegation, the first delegation with regards to the chickens has been removed and rescheduled. And there's an addition, 9.4, when we get to that, is a reading on the third reading for the bylaw on the Schellenberger drain. So those two items, and that's got it covered, Dan? Oh, yes, and Councillor Bank is on Zoom. So do we get him in the corner on our screen, or how do we know?
I'll speak, Mayor McKenzie, council, when I have something to say, if that's okay.
Yep, it's never stopped you before, has it?
Okay, no.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so I have a recommendation here that we accept the agenda as presented. We have a mover and seconder, Councillor Chessel and Councillor Rose. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. So we do have a number of items on the consent agenda. Flip my page over here. Actually, we got 15 items. 14 plus the March 6th regular council meeting. Is there anything there anybody would like a little more clarification on, or would like pulled and dealt with separately? Don't see anybody's hand going up. Okay, so then recommendation is that the municipality of West Perth. Oh, was there somebody in their hand up? Sorry, Andrew.
We keep on getting these Cannabis Act resolutions from the Huron County area. Are we having these similar problems here in Perth? Are we hearing these complaints in our own county?
It's more well, I haven't had any. I don't think we've had any comments in West Perth that I'm aware of. But there is a situation in Huron County that there's been several letters go out of concern, and it's impacting a residence or a family in a residence there, and I think that's where it stemmed from. If you want to support that, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I'm looking at Dean. We haven't dealt with it at the county, have we? We did. We supported it at the county. So it has been supported at Perth County, but if you want to support it here, we could pull it and support it if you wish.
Could you clarify just one minor thing about it? I'll just state the understanding that I have of it so far, but the point of the resolution. It would change the enforcement of the problem from a bylaw enforcement problem to an OPP problem. Is that the idea?
Who wants to handle that one?
It would ultimately depend on what amendments are made. I think at this point, we're just looking, the question would be to support other municipalities and lobby for the act to be reviewed and updated. Mm-hmm. So the result of that, I couldn't speak to right now. I don't know how they would amend it.
I would certainly suggest this wording, though, seeing as we have a bylaw enforcement sort of on as need basis. If we do have this problem, it would be a bit of a thing to have to deal with.
Western Wardens. Okay. Is there anything else? And we'll deal with that one separately. Actually, we could, if you want, we'll just deal with that one right now. 4.9, the resolution from the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus, and you would like to move that we support that.
Yes, Your Worship.
Okay. Do we have a seconder for that particular motion? Moved by Councillor Chessel. Any further discussion on that, or any questions? There's been quite a few correspondence come over the last little while. Councillor Rose?
Yes, I really haven't heard much about this, so could you kind of bring me up to speed on that, please? A Reader's Digest version.
It's more in regards to production facilities than it is the retail side of it. So to the best of my knowledge, and I'll look, I see John back there, I can make eye contact with him quick, but we don't have production facilities. We just have retail. So that likely one reason why you may not be hearing of it. I think additionally too, there's just some concern that the legislation was passed relatively quickly and they're just looking to say, okay, it's been in effect for a little bit now. Maybe we can review this and what are some of the impacts? So that would be my overall comments. Hopefully that answers your question.
Dean, go ahead.
Through you, your worship, in the correspondence, one of the primary issues is that there's no, the request is for Health Canada to implement a system of minimum setbacks between the production facility, cannabis production facility, and sensitive odor receptors, including homes and public facilities. So same as there's a minimum distance separation between an agricultural operation and somewhere that's zoned residential. The request is similar in nature in that respect, just to give a little more detail on what the request is about.
I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, but I don't know. Do you want to add anything, John or Susanna, with regards to this? Okay, thanks. Yeah. Any other questions with regards to that? So it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of supporting that resolution? Opposed, if any? That is carried then. Okay, is there anything else you want pulled out of the consent agenda? Okay, if not, then we'll support, oh, sorry, Andrew.
I actually just have one question about the BIA, if you don't mind.
Yep,
I
go
don't
ahead.
know if it's entirely pertinent to the consent agenda, but I got a couple of questions from local business owners about the membership in the BIA, why some businesses were in and some businesses weren't, and why the map of the BIA appeared to be so constrained for downtown. I'd like to be able to answer the question if anybody knows the answer to that.
One of you guys want to answer?
So
Jeff?
I can answer it from the perspective of just having a little bit more history than Dan has, although Dan's been more the legal expert on it. And if there's a legal question, I'll defer to Dan. But the area that the BIA did, it was intended to be a downtown BIA when it was created. It was created in 2009, and the act is very prescriptive about the definition of the BIA boundary because those members of the BIA pay an extra levy, which is administered by the municipality for their membership in the BIA. And so they pay a little bit of extra taxation. I think the minimum is $100. And then it goes up from there depending on assessment. And so that boundary for the BIA is very, very set in that original bylaw, and would be very complex to change because it required a percentage of compliance to vote to have the BIA, and that boundary was what was established to have it. And if they were to change the boundary, I expect it would be a pretty rigorous legal process to either expand it or reduce it. The way the BIA has handled that is that it wanted to focus on downtown, but it takes associate memberships, which are businesses that would benefit from having an association with the BIA, but aren't eligible to be a BIA member. So they have an associate member category, and that allows non-downtown businesses that are in Mitchell or in other areas in West Perth to participate in the BIA and to be fairly having some involvement with the BIA, but not paying the BIA levy.
Thank you.
Okay, we're good. All right, if there is no further questions. We didn't take a vote on that, have we? No. Okay, all right. So recommendation then, that we accept the consent agenda 4.1, 4.8, and 410 to 415 of the agenda. Moved by Counselor O'Donnell and seconded by Counselor Phelps. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Okay, before we go any further, it's the first time it's ever happened, but I forgot to ask if anybody had a conflict of interest with anything on the agenda tonight. So if you do, you can declare it at this time, or if you find that we're treading into hot water later on in the meeting, you can declare it at that time. We do have a couple delegations, I guess, or more reports than anything. The first one is the drainage report. And we have Paul McIntyre here from Burnside and Associates to deal with the Morello Municipal Drain. So Paul, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Mayor McKenzie, members of council. Let me first say it's very nice to be in front of a live audience again, as opposed to being on a Zoom call with you folks. It's nice to be here. It's nice to be in a brand new office building and a brand new office council. Maybe if we can just start, Audrey, if you want to hold up the plan of the Morello Drain. So I'm here to present the report for the Morello Municipal Drain. Audrey gets to scroll through to the plan section. Back one, I believe. Back one more. There we go. So here we have the watershed of the Morello Municipal Drain. It's right here in the village of Mitchell. The heavy dark line shows the extent of the watershed, and the watershed is mainly comprised of industrial, commercial lands, as well as a little bit of agricultural lands. The impetus or the initiation of this report was to support a severance of the Stephen Anderson property. We can just go back. There is an insert. There we go. The Anderson property is right in the center, and Steve is severing his property for development. In order to do that, he had to relocate a portion of the Morello Municipal Drain, and this report supports that relocation. So if we can just see just go back to the blow up a little bit, Audrey. The blue line on the plan there shows open ditch, and then the orange line is the relocation of the existing 30-inch tile system. So it is a large diameter storm sewer system here in the village of Mitchell. And in order to support the development of the property severed by Mr. Anderson, that drain need to be relocated. So we have proposed that in the design here. It only affects the Anderson properties. Therefore, we have assessed it as a special benefit to that property. There are no other assessments to any other owners within the watershed. We did have an on-site meeting. We'll follow the proper procedures of the act, and we're here to present our report for your consideration. In the end, Mr. Anderson will relocate the drain with his own forces, and he'll pay for those costs. The cost of this report will be paid by the municipality, assessed back to Mr. Anderson in accordance with the assessment schedule here. If there are any questions, it's fairly brief, but it's a very small property.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Any questions for Paul on that particular drain? Okay, I don't see any hands going up. So we do have a recommendation, and it is that the Council Municipality of West Perth accept the report from RJ Burnside and Associates Limited dated February 2023 for the Morello Municipal Drain Realignment 2022. You have a mover and second for that? Councillor Phelps, Councillor, I'll take Deputy Mayor Frankowski. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next drain that we have is the Snyder's Coltman drain. And we have with us, got to help me out here. I'm drawing a blank. Brandon with us from Spreet and Associates. So I will turn the floor over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry, Brandon, can you put that talking there? Thank you.
Everyone hear me now?
Yep.
So the Snyder's Copeland drain is a new drain. There was a petition received last July to the municipality. We were appointed in August of last year, and then there was a site meeting in September. At the time at the site meeting, all the properties were in the corn, so that kind of delayed the surveying. Once the corn is off, we got the drain surveyed. So as you can see on the plan, this is, I believe, near line 46. On the south side of the road, you did receive a request from the three landowners on the south side, Mr. Poppy, Mr. Schneider, Mr. Copeland, hence the name. So this is a brand new drain under section 4. There was no existing drain here in the past. It is tributary to the ditch to the west. So the approximate area of drainage here is approximately 61 hectares, approximately 150 acres. It involves landowners you see on the screen. So what we have proposed here is a new drain tile, that is, and it starts at the ditch in Mr. Poppy's property, then goes across Mr. Schneider's, and it ends at Mr. Copeland's. So it's all on two landowners' property. We did have a proposal to go further, but at the meeting in February, which is when we had the preliminary meeting, it was decided to do the costs. They were going to cut the drain back, and we'll stop here. So this entire drain, I believe, is 21-inch tile. There was an upsizing done, so it's a 50-millimeter design above the regular 1.5 inches for 38-millimeter. Those upsizing costs are charged directly to the owners that request them, as it's now grantable. Total project cost is $96,000, and it's assessed to all the landowners within the box or the dark line. Again, as you can see, similar to the last one, there are allowances. The 96,000 is inclusive of all engineering, all fees, etc. The approximate construction cost is in the neighborhood of 68,000. And we did have a preliminary meeting in the middle of February, just before we issued the report. So everything's fairly current. They're all aware it's coming. We did actually talk to, after the meeting, all of the landowners did participate. So if you go to the assessment for construction, you will see there's approximately $7,600 associated with upsizing the tile. Those are assessed directly to Mr. Schneider and Mr. Poppy. No one else wanted to participate in increasing the design. As well as municipality has assessed a portion for the road on line 6. So I guess I'm here tonight to see if there's any questions or if there's any owners present. I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, any questions with regards to this drain? And I don't believe we have anybody from the public here tonight, so if there are no questions, then we do have a resolution here that the Council Municipality of West Perth accept the report from Spreat and Associates London Limited dated February 23rd, 2023 for the Snyder's Copeland drain. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Duck and Councillor Foster. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Okay, thank you, Brian.
That's one question. In the past, when would you like it tendered?
Normally it has varied. hasn't it? You can answer
Yeah.
if you want to.
We don't need a decision of council to,
I know in the past, I know Walter's always been, let's get it tendered.
let's
by
get
the
it tendered
voter
right
edition.
now.
Yeah,
I will say on this drain, so all the work is on Mr. Schneider's property and Mr. Poppy. Mr. Schneider's property, I believe, is in with the intention for it to be done after. That was said during the meeting. They are like all the landowners kind of planned this project together, and they've timed it to go in after we.
so as far as tender going, like I would think the sooner the better, and then that you can pick, stipulate the date that you want it done.
Yeah, we can reach out to the two landowners that are having the work. The municipality does have tenders already.
Okay.
And we were looking in April 17th, I think, for quarter
Yep.
revision.
Oh, that'd be
So-
excellent. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on, next is some planning reports, and the first one is a zoning bylaw 0422, and I believe, John, are you doing this one? So I'll let you come up and take over for that one. We've seen this one a few times.
Thank you, Mayor McKenzie and council. As Walter alluded to, we've seen this one a few times, both at the official plan amendment stage and the zoning bylaw amendment stage. So this is the Reed file located just south of Fullerton. We're coming here today for a zoning bylaw amendment recommendation. We've previously had an official plan amendment as well as a zoning bylaw amendment public meeting. And this is where we're at today. There we go. Okay. So I'll try to speed things along because I know you guys have a busy night tonight. But as you see with the file here, the zone on the property is currently A2. And that is an aggregate designation specific for gravel and sand deposits. The applicant is pursuing an A1 zone change. So the current aggregate designation doesn't align with the proposed zoning, as it is intended to limit the development of sensitive land uses in favor of aggregate extraction opportunities. And this has been sufficiently demonstrated through the official plan amendment that aggregate potential on the site is nil. And the owner is therefore required to satisfy section 5515 of the Perth County official plan for existing lots of record in order to go to that A1 residential, agricultural residential zone. Excuse me. So just quick overview of this section. First and foremost being that the proponent must satisfy the local municipal council that farming or other permitted uses are not possible or practical on the subject existing lot. The owner has submitted a planning merit letter produced by Ron Davidson Planning Consultants. And this planning merit letter, it does lack a bit of consideration for agricultural opportunities of, say, varying types and sizes and intensities, but it does acknowledge that the property is deficient in area. It's not that large in scale. It's deficient in area for livestock operation opportunities. And the proximity to Fullerton settlement area also further inhibits many agricultural opportunities. So these are the studies submitted with the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment application. As you see, we've discussed those previously. So correspondence received at the public meeting on February 6th. There were no comments from any members of the public, and the department recommends approval. I can answer any questions. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, John. Any questions for John on that particular item? There's a lot of work involved with this one, wasn't there? Eh? Like,
Well, there's a bit.
we put them through quite a bit to get this. If there's no questions, then the recommendation is that municipality of West Perth approve the zoning bylaw amendment ZBA 04/2022 affecting lands described as part lots 12 and 13 West Mitchell Road, reference plan 44R 3428, part 1, Fullerton Ward, the municipality of West Perth. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Rose, Councillor Foster. Again, any questions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you, John. Okay, the next item that we have, plan of subdivision, and I believe Susanna is going to do that one for.
Thank you very much, Mayor McKenzie, and good evening, council. This is an application for a plan of subdivision which council considered earlier in October. And I'll offer a brief overview as some members of council didn't have the benefit for hearing about it earlier. So it's referred to as the West Mitchell plan of subdivision, and the red star on the screen now shows you the location of the property. There was a public meeting held on October 6th at Perth County Council, and there were some comments from the neighboring property owners. So we've had a couple of meetings with the neighboring property owners, and the report is being brought back to council tonight for consideration of the revised conditions for the plan of subdivision. And then following West Perth Council's direction, we'll be taking this application to County Council again for their consideration. So we go to the next slide, please. The property is within the, this is the location of the subject property. You can see it's just a little bit less than 12 acres. And it's proposed to be developed for a residential plan of subdivision. If we go to the next slide. So this is the mapping in the Minchell official plan, and the yellow area is the area that's proposed to be developed, which is a residential designation. And the zoning, the brown area is a future development zone, so a zoning bylaw amendment is one of the conditions of the plan of subdivision. We go to the next slide. So this is the plan of subdivision, and I have a few slides to outline the residential units that are proposed. So you can see here 106 homes are proposed, including 18 single detached residences, 10 semis, 18 street townhouses, and 60 condominiums or apartments. We go to the next slide. So since it was at West Perth Council, the sketch of the plan of subdivision has been revised to show 2 pedestrian accesses, one over to Dungy Lane and one over to Wimpole Street, to encourage active transportation. We go to the next slide. And I think one more, if we hit it one more time. And again, we hit it again. There we go. Oh, there's one more. Okay, so this is the location of the single. So 17 units per hectare shows the density of that area. So along Wimpole Street and on the west side of Dungy Lane, the unopened Dungy Lane, are single detached residences. Then you can see the location of the townhouses. And in the middle block, block 17, is proposed to be a condominium built as apartments. We go to the next slide, please. And as well as those pedestrian accesses that I referred to before, there is an access. I think if you hit one, yeah, the municipality is proposing a walkway to connect to Memorial Park. And if we go to the next slide. So this is what generated the subsequent meetings. Dungy Lane is proposed to be extended from Huron Road into the plan of subdivision. And this photo is taken standing on Huron Road looking south. If you go one more time to the next slide, please. So this is the location of Dungy Lane. The residents at 98 Huron Road and 108 Huron Road were concerned with regards to the impact of Dungy Lane on their homes. So there were 2 meetings, one on October 14th. The neighboring property owners, as well as Jeff Brick and Carolyn Baker, represents the developer, and myself, met on the Dungy Lane road allowance to discuss the concerns that neighboring property owners had. And those concerns are summarized in the planning report in your package. So I'm guessing you've noticed that. There was discussion with regards to whether or not that subdivision could be accessed via Wimpole Street instead of building this road between these 98 and 108 Huron Road. The people at 108 Huron Road were concerned with regards to the structural integrity of their foundation and the structure of the home. And there was also concern with regards to the mature trees that are on 98 Huron Road. So the developer went away and did quite a bit of work, including designing the roadbed, as well as engaging as NRSI, which is an ecological firm, to assess the health of the trees along Dungy Lane. And then we had a meeting again at the request of the developers. Mayor McKenzie and Deputy Mayor Trankowski attended in order to participate in the conversation with regards to how the neighboring property owners' concerns could be incorporated into the conditions of draft approval for the plan of subdivision. And these are outlined in the planning report too, and are also included in the conditions that you have in the package. So the first concern with regards to the access, maybe if we go back up to one of the slides of the plan of subdivision. Yeah, that one's fine. So there was a suggestion that perhaps Street A could be the access as opposed rather than having Dungy Lane continue in this area. And in response, the municipality in consultation with the developer, has drafted a condition that Dungy Lane, which is going to be renamed, and that's one of the conditions of draft approval, shall not be constructed until the earlier of the construction of 100 dwelling units within the plan of subdivisions or 3 years from the date of that the development agreement is signed. So once the development agreement is signed, 3 years from that time, or the construction of 100 units from that time, will then be the trigger that allows Dungy Lane to be extended. And that's condition 2D in your package. The second, a pre and post construction inspection will be completed for both 98 Huron Road and 108 Huron Road. Any damage to the structural integrity of the residence resulting from the construction at Dungy Lane shall be repaired by the owner or developer. And that's on condition 2E in the draft conditions. And then finally, with regards to the existing row of mature trees, that the development agreement will note that efforts to protect the trees will occur. And finally, that the developer, and that's condition 2J. And then finally, the developer will plant 3 trees for every 1 tree that will be impacted. And there are 27 trees that may be impacted, as according to the the report prepared by the developer's ecologist. So just one change following to the condition 2J that's in your council report. So that's the provision to protect the trees along Dungy Lane road allowance to the satisfaction of the municipality of West Perth. That the NRSI report outlines several ways that the trees could be protected. So the suggestion is that the wording of 2J be revised to read provisions to protect the trees along Dungy Lane road allowance as outlined in the private tree impact assessment prepared by NRSI to the satisfaction of the municipality of West Perth. So the recommendation today is that West Perth Council endorse the conditions that are outlined in the planning report in your package tonight, and that you forward the conditions of draft approval for this file to County Council for their consideration with approval of the plan of subdivision.
Okay, thank you, Susanna. Questions on this? There's a lot of information there to go over. Any questions at all? Deputy Mayor?
Through you, your worship, not a question, but just a comment. A word of thanks to your department, Susanna, as well as our municipal engineer in working with the concerned property owners to resolve their issues and concerns. I realize it took a fair bit of effort, and I wanted to commend everyone for taking that effort, as well as the effort of West Perth staff. So I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Right, if there is no further comments or questions, then the recommendation that we have here is that West Perth Council forward conditions of draft approval for WP 2201 plan of subdivision submitted by 27229988 Ontario Inc. West Mitchell Developments, part lot 64, all of blocks 22 to 25, registered plan number 532, and part of park lots 63 and 66, registered plan 341, municipality of West Perth, to County Council. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Rose, seconder. Councillor O'Donnell. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you, Susanna. All right, we're moving right along here. I don't believe we have any reports from the chief building official or the fire chief, head librarian, or the facilities and recreation parks manager. So it brings us down to item 6.7, and that is the farm forestry exemption. And Wendy, I'll let you talk to us about this particular item.
Thanks, Mayor McKenzie and council. So this report is just for information, so you guys are aware that there's a new farm forestry exemption. It's new legislation that comes into effect as of January 1st. And it basically is designed to promote woodlots or protected forest. So there's going to be some more farmland that's designated as exempt. So when we did a test on the information that we have, it looks like there'll be another 7,500 in write-offs in 2023 due to the change in the class of property. So MPAC is in the middle of sending out notices. We're in the middle of receiving those notices. And so we're also using social media to communicate the new change. So if there's any questions on that report, I'll gladly take them.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Any questions for Wendy on that particular item? Okay, if not, we do have a recommendation, and that is that we, Council Municipality of West Perth, accept the farm forestry exemption report as information. We have a mover and seconder for that, Councillor Harold and Councillor Chessel. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you. So I think that kind of is the main part of, other than budget, for our meeting tonight. So I'll turn it over now to our budget chair, Deputy Mayor Trenkowski, to carry on with the rest of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. Before we proceed, I wanted to check with you, Councillor Vink. Are you still with us?
Yes, I am, Dean. Thank you.
Okay, as mentioned before, feel free to join in at any point when you feel the need to do so.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, we will proceed with item 6.7.2, and that's a report on the 2023 budget impacts from Wendy, please.
Thank you, Chair. So just a few items that were highlighted in the report. I'm just going to run through a presentation. It highlights some of the points in the reports, but staff definitely saw when we were doing some of our analysis that fuel, inflation, staff costs were all driving factors in what impacted the 2023 budget. So just on fuel, we were seeing tenders coming in with a fuel surcharge. And so that has increased costs on projects or cost of delivery of items. And then we also saw it in the total cost of fuel. So when we did a quick analysis between comparing years, we saw that we were budgeting $236,550, but we actually spent $340. And so that was a big increase to us. And so fuel is definitely driving some of the costs for this year's budget. So, okay, sorry. Yes, I do. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of rewind a little bit on some of the reports that you've seen. So assessment growth, we did have 27 million in new assessment. And so that produces a notional decrease in our rate of 2.56. And then it gives us an additional 235,000 in revenue. So basically growth is adding more revenue to our budget this year, which is a good thing. And again, a 1% tax increase is $91,411 roughly. And this chart just kind of explains the different percentages. So it just goes up, doubles, triples. And as far as inflation, here's what inflation was in 2022. So it ranged from 5.1 to 8.1. And again, our fuel costs were up 35%. Cost of living was approved at 5.54. We saw increase in material costs. A lot has to do with the or fuel surcharges. And our insurance went up 17.22%. So we're definitely seeing our costs going higher than inflation. The other impact that on our budget was some staff improvements. So last year, positions that were approved in the budget were partial years. And so in 2023, they're coming in at full 12 months. So that was showing as an increase in wages. And then we also saw using the salary plan that a lot of admin staff are in step 1 and 2 in their merit increases. So they're moving up in steps. And then there's also the cost of living. In debt obligations, this is just a quick snapshot of the debt. So we're seeing an increase this year of 15.39% compared to last year. And you'll see that the total annual debt payment, if you read the bottom line, kind of stays the same for 23 and 24. And then 2025, it drops off. There's two loan payments that are completed in 2024. And then in reserves, this is kind of a summary of reserves. So again, there's 3 different reserves that are available. There's reserves. And so those are council directed funds. This year we're drawing out almost 400,000 and we're contributing almost 400,000, pretty even. And then on the restricted side, so that's more your water, wastewater type, we're withdrawing 547,000 and we're contributing 1.3 million. So the water and wastewater departments reserves are growing essentially. And then the obligatory deferred revenue. So again, that's your gas tax and your parkland reserve funds. So those are kind of restricted more with legislation. And in capital, the summary of capitals, we're spending 4.8 million and it's being funded 463 through reserves, 389 through user fees, 2.4 in grants. And then other, that one seems high, but what it is it's the 50% payment for the shared bridge. And so that's why that's looking high. And then the levy, we're drawing 752,000 pay for capital. So a couple things with this budget year, we implemented new software. The software definitely provided benefit to us. We have 3 modules. We have a salary plan, an operating plan, and a capital plan. The salary plan this year was used to kind of put down everyone's staff and their hours, and then we could model it out using different benefits and so on. So we were able to kind of provide more precision with our salary and wages this year. It's a work in process. It's still got some tweaking to do, but I think it provided good support to staff. The operating budget was new, was implemented this year. So we got new reports. We also did a restructuring in operations. And then capital, we're almost done the implementation. We just have a few server resets and we should be able to start using it for 2024. So the benefits that we saw as staff is that we were able to track and use the software kind of collaboratively. So we could all have access to it. It wasn't kind of like done and then saved somewhere and then people had to find it. So it was central. It was easy for everyone to use. Everyone could put their notes. It wasn't specific. We found we were spending less time fussing in Excel type of thing and more time in Analyze. So we have a couple modules still to kind of work through, which is the reporting. So we have some finessing to do to make sure the reports look fine. We're hoping that in April, we'll be able to give you your first quarter financial statements from it. And it'll look the same as the reports that are presented tonight. So it'll look and feel the same way. Make sure I'm not missing something in another report. I feel like I'm zipping along, so if there's any questions. Okay.
Any
Uh,
questions from council so far? I'll take this opportunity to ask. Any questions, Councillor Bank, so far?
No, thank you, Dean.
Okay, we'll carry on then, please, Wendy.
Okay, so this screen here is based off of 100,000 in assessment, residential assessment. And so here we have three taxes that come into West Perth and then we distribute them. So West Perth is our portion of the taxes. And we have the county's portion and the school board portion to give us a total tax. And so from this chart here, you can see that there's an increase across the board based off of what's being presented tonight. 100,000 assessment would increase by $52.71 for residential. County portion of increase would be $17.79 for a total of $70.50. So the total tax on that would be 8.99% from West Perth, 6.52 from the county, 0 change from the school board for a total of 6.96. So here's what the budget looks like. Our budget portion is 10.2 million. County's portion is 4.6 and school board is 3.1, almost 3.2. We took a look at some comparatives around us. The numbers can mean a lot of things. So I would caution if you're reading in the newspaper, sometimes a number or percent can really skew how something looks. So here's a good example. I pulled 4, ranges anywhere between 3.6 to 10, but it's all roughly the same per household. And so it's hard when you look at a percent and you think it sounds high, but when you start looking at what it means by dollar, these are examples of kind of what it looks like. And so growth can be a big component of some of these numbers. Could be services offered, could be their assessment type that they have within their municipality that can change stuff. So it's hard to compare. But if we look at dollar for dollar, I thought this was a good example to show the comparatives. So then there was a report that kind of broke down the changes from what you saw in January to today. So there was about 12,000 in difference, decrease. But there was a lot of changes that made up that change. Unless somebody has a specific question on all those changes, we can jump right into the scenarios.
Any questions for Wendy at this point from anybody? Councillor Vink, do you have any questions so far?
On the previous slide, Wendy, you had dollars per household, but on the previous slide, it was per $100,000. It is, are we comparing apples to apples here? So $100,000 in assessment versus per household. Would our average household assessment be 240,000 in West Perth? So I could multiply that $70 by times 2.4 to get what the total tax increase might be.
That's correct. I just presented it this way, just so we could see the county and the school board based on 100,000 assessment versus the median.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Please continue, Wendy. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor Fournier.
I got a dumb question.
No questions.
What's the
done.
difference between tax rate and levy? I've been reading it as the same this whole time.
So levy is our budget number. So levy would be, we need $10 million to operate as a municipality. And then the tax rate is what gets charged. And so the difference is the growth. So at the beginning, there was, I said that we had an extra 235,000 in revenue. So that revenue decreases the levy requirement into the taxes. And then that's why it's lower. Your tax rate incorporates growth.
Anybody else? Oh, we'll carry on with the scenarios then, Wendy, please.
Okay, so scenario one is what's I presented. It's what's in the budget package is all those reports. Represents an 8.99 tax rate increase. So the estimated annual residential increase, and that's West Perth portion only, for a medium household would be $126.52. And for a farm, it would be $194.50. And then option two would just be the garbage bin fees. And that must be farther down in the reports. So we can discuss that if we want to look at that option. And then 3 and 4 include option 2, and then other factors like funding the mowers and the pickup truck from parks out of the park reserve. And then option 4 has all those same things, plus it funds the remaining capital projects of Georgina Street and Henry Street from reserve.
Okay, Councillor Foster, you had a question.
I remember Vink maybe a month or two ago asking if we could use the AMO gas tax for gravel road maintenance. I was wondering if anything came to that or.
No, it has to be a capital related item.
Any more questions on the 4 scenarios from anybody? Councillor Rose, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I guess I'm just asking for a little more clarity for myself. So number 1, it goes up, it's clean. If you go down, farther you go down, you're just kind of taking the money from other places, correct, Wendy?
That's correct. There's no
Yes.
cut in services. There's no, it's all coming from reserves or a rate increase on the bin fee. So
So yeah, you're taking from here and putting it over there, but it's basically the same thing. And now, once again, when you're talking reserves, are we talking reserves for taxation? Or are we pulling out of, like it has happened in the past, where they pulled out of some other reserves and then we got in trouble because we needed that money and we had drained it to keep the taxes down, which just puts the problem forward another year or 2. Am I correct in that?
yeah, so my recommendation is the 8.99. Yes, we pulled from reserves in the other 3 scenarios because we don't have a long-term plan for our capital. It makes it hard for staff to know how the reserves meet our capital requirements. But that being said, we did look at the park and rec reserve for the mowers and pickup truck. And then also the roads reserve, we did look it for funding the remainder for Georgina and Henry Street. So it's coming out of those specific reserves and not out of a tax stabilization. But again, we don't have the 10-year capital plan starting in April to kind of marry those together. So a little blind.
Thank you for the clarity.
Any other questions? Oh, Mayor McKenzie, go ahead, please.
So just to clarify, I think where Murray was coming from with the increase in the garbage bin fees. Like, as of right now, basically we're subsidizing it costs us more than what we're having revenue come in from the bins. So you're paying one way or the other, Murray. So this way, and I always kind of think that this is something that probably should be user pay, the garbage, as much as anything. So it kind of brings that up, that it is more of a user pay type of system. The question I had, when we get down into the fourth option there, we talk about Moores and that. We had talked a meeting or so ago whether about pickup trucks and whether we could go with rather than a new truck, go with a used one or one coming off of a lease that would maybe be 2 years old or something like that. Did we look into that at all?
Yeah, and I actually wrote it in the report, but I don't think I hit save. And so when I went back today, I was like, oh, it's not there. So we did look at the two. So one was the building truck and the other one was the fire truck. So the fire truck currently is going to be used by recreation. Correct. And then the building one wasn't suitable for their needs.
We're the only two trucks that we were looking at. Okay.
Yeah.
So that shouldn't have a big impact then if we're going to, the one we're going to just recycle for parks.
Yeah, and it was already in the budget.
Another look around the council table. Anybody with questions? Councillor Duck, please.
It's more of a comment. I think than anything if I'm allowed to say it now as opposed to later on, but I think I would kind of lean towards personally the scenario 3. I like that it stays down under the 8% or 8.1% tax, or sorry, inflation rate that we're seeing right now. I don't know if we want to spend a lot of money from the reserve or road reserves right now with so many road projects that are on the go. But just a comment or a thought that I possibly had that I like the 7.51% number.
Thanks, Councillor Duck. I think before we get too much further, item 6.9.1, the CAO's report on automated co-collection of the garbage bin rate fee adjustment. This would probably be an appropriate time to mention that because that is what scenario 2 contemplates. So at this time, I should ask the CAO to bring that item forward to present the information under that item, please.
Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. So normally this report would be coming from me from Environmental Services or Operations, and Operations Manager Kramer had a scheduled vacation and passed along his regrets for tonight. So I'm presenting the report. We dropped in the CAO section and we should have dropped it in operations now that I think about it, so we could tell you about it before we got to the budget. The report was delivered to you as part of the budget package. The sort of analysis is that, like Mayor McKenzie said just a few moments ago, where we can align user fees and rates with actual costs, it's best to do it that way rather than dropping it on a tax levy, because it's a more precise charge to where the benefit is realized. And so through the course of the last number of years, the bins were brought in. So we're talking about the bins that are used for garbage, not the recycling bins, but the garbage bins. The bins were brought in approximately 2012. And for whatever reason, through the course of time, West Perth didn't do a lot of increases on the bin fees, whereas our other municipalities in our comparator group did. And those, as a result of that, our bin rates are significantly lower than our comparator group. And we recognized this, had a bit of a conversation about it with the Environmental Services Committee back in the fall. And that was before we got deeply into budget and got sort of a sense of the amount that the budget increase was going to be. And I think that based on the budget discussion, this conversation about properly aligning fees for a service was something we wanted to bring back. So that led to me picking up this report, updating it, and bringing it directly onto the council agenda in the format that you see. And the net effect of the report would be that it would be a slight increase in the bin fees, which would bring the price for the 35-gallon bin up into line with the market comparables. In fact, it would be the median price. But because we haven't been updating the prices for the 65 and 95-gallon bins at the rate that's proportional on a per gallon basis, they have a lot further to move. We didn't propose moving them all the way in the first year because we feel that that would be a bit much. You might want to do that over the course of 2 or 3 rate adjustments. Councillor Chessel sent an email with some really great questions, and I ran an analysis of what that price per gallon is. And it's very clear when you look at the analysis that most of the municipalities in our comparative group have been escalating prices on a per gallon basis rather than just kind of arbitrary on the bins. And we've been doing it arbitrarily. And I think there's a desire to get it back to the more fair per gallon rate. And so if we did go to the per gallon rate, for example, in the course of time, using the 2022 numbers and our 23 increase, which doesn't kick in until August, our bins should actually be, the price for the West Perth bin on a per gallon basis should be, oh, now I got to read my flow chart. We're making it, we put it up to 220, but the median is actually 270. And we're not suggesting you would make that all the way in 1 year. You might want to look at that over the course of time. And really good conversation today with Richard, right? And, you know, the unintended consequence could be, and ideally, maybe we'd want to make it more expensive to buy a larger bin, frankly, as a way to try to encourage people to produce less garbage. But we would also have to think about that people might be tempted to buy a smaller bin and try to shove a lot into it, and you end up with a lot of spillage, and you kind of have the unintended consequence of having a lot of garbage not get into the truck, but get into the ditch. And there's also the fact that we do pick up every week in town and every 2 weeks in the rural part of the municipality, which is strictly a cost choice. It does basically cost twice as much to do it that way, but that often puts the rural owners to wanting a bin which is larger because they have to accommodate 2 weeks of garbage rather than 1. And we'd want to think about the per gallon rate is probably the fair way, and then charging extra for larger bins might actually unfairly not be what you're wanting to do to the rural owners. So this doesn't go all the way to the per gallon rate. It goes part way there. And I think you'd see an analysis next year to take another incremental step. My recommendation today would be that you should be targeting getting them all to the per gallon rates, which would see that ultimately 270 for 95 gallon bin. That's the median for the market, but we're not going that far in this first year. And I know that's a bit of complicated information. It's just been an area where we haven't really done a detailed analysis of it in a few years, and we're a little behind. But I can tell you from inquiries I get from other municipalities, we often get asked why our rates are so low for our bins, and it's that we haven't increased the price with the cost of the service like others have. And that kind of hurts our comparator municipalities because they have trouble bringing it up if they're kept low artificially.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Any questions there, Doug Phelps, Councillor Phelps, go ahead, please.
Actually, 2 questions then. The increase, is it going to cover the cost of what our garbage is to pick up? And 2, they charge us a surcharge on the fuel, so there's one of the overages through our budget also.
I'm not sure how the contract's laid out with Blue Water, but definitely saw an increase in their collection fees. I think it was in the.
So it was the $30,000 increase this year, but even with, so this increase brings in an extra approximately $50,000 of revenue conservatively. And we would have needed to go up 30,000. So it's a step in the direction of fully doing more cost recovery, but the levy hit for solid waste landfill is around 150,000 on levy. And ideally, you could make that zero, but it's a combination of bin rates and also tipping fees. And so the bin rates, this report really focuses on making our rates sort of at the median of our comparables, which makes it, and it's kind of ideal that our garbage pickup rates are in that comparable market, because that's one thing that people will look at a municipality and say, your rates are high or low, and being in the middle is the good spot. Being at the median is the sweet spot. But I would think that you will see through the Environmental Services Committee in the summer here or in the fall, come back with a more detailed report talking about the next step of looking at bins, but also looking at tipping fees, and then bringing that back for the 2024 budget. So this is just one baby step towards trying to get that levy number down to zero.
Thanks, Jeff. Councillor Harold, please.
Yeah, so I understood that pretty well. I can see where the larger bin would cost slightly less than the smaller bin on volume, only because the truck stops twice as many times for 50 gallons, versus 100, right? So there is the cost isn't exactly per gallon even. That's all I wanted to say there.
Fair point. It's a fair point, and at that point in time, it's almost like a bit of an incentive to try to use a smaller bin if you can.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions on the presentation for the proposed change to the garbage bin fees? Councillor Fournier, go ahead.
Yeah, just go ahead. One quick question. Some people in the rural areas actually have to have 2 garbage containers. Are we not subsidizing somewhat as Councillor Phelps says, aren't we sort of subsidizing the more densely populated wards?
So it's a price per bin. So if there's a household that's not able to get by with the large bin and they've got 2 bins, then they're paying that price per bin. And the question of, and so I think, and I think it's a complex question, but I think we have to, the elephant in the room is that, we only pick up every 2 weeks in the rural area and every week in the Mitchell ward, but that is a cost factor. And when we go across municipal services, if we start to break down all of our municipal services this way, there are other costs. There's $1 million of rolling stock sitting in the fire hall that is tanker trucks that are only used in the rural area and not in the urban area, because the urban area has fire hydrants. So frankly, it's a complex municipality because we have urban and rural. And I think if we try to dissect every service right down to the very penny, what you start to do is unintentionally create an urban-rural divide. And I think pragmatically as staff, we try to sort of say, look, we try to make this as fair as possible, but we can't get it to the penny. And there is some give and take in urban and rural, and that the urban and rural part of this community makes us stronger and makes us a more robust community. And I think if we constantly pick it apart, and I know you're not, but I think you could be tempted to. We could argue about how many bridges there are in the rural area versus the urban area. If we start to pick that apart, I think it only makes us weaker and not stronger.
Councillor Fournier.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Councillor Vink, do you have anything at this time?
I would also support this interim step until we have a complex review coming up later on.
Okay, thank you. So I think we'll swing back to our original budget discussion if there's no further questions about the garbage bin presentation. So we have the 4 scenarios presented there. Is there any more discussion or comment on those before we move towards trying to come up with a solution? Councillor Phelps?
Just sorry, so the pickup in both option 3 and 4 is should be pulled out. We don't need that pickup. Is that what we're saying, or we still need that pickup? Okay.
Yeah, we still need that pickup.
I believe Councillor Fournier, you had a question or something to add?
I'm trying to recall the exact details, but in some of our previous budget discussions, hadn't we picked the lowest repayment number on our asset management plan? Sooner or later, that's going to catch up to us. Shouldn't we be planning for the future to have the money to handle that sort of thing?
Wendy, do you want to answer that one first?
Yeah, so we've taken a look at bridges. We brought report cards with annual requirements, and we've looked at some fleet last year. So until we have the 10-year capital plan, it's very hard for us to kind of forecast what our needs are based on that. Definitely staff are nervous that we're not contributing to reserves. We do know we have some big capital projects coming, but once we have that 10-year capital plan in place, and we can look at all departments and see all the needs. So I guess that's why staff are kind of cautioned not to use reserves, but see the need to reduce the tax rate and have put forward some options to use reserves. Whatever council's comfortable with, we provided some examples.
If I may, Deputy Mayor Trentowski.
Yep, go ahead, Councillor Bain.
In that same vein, because we don't have a long-term asset management plan, we haven't been able to decide what method that we want to choose. And one of the methods is pay as you go, that we don't need to have the asset paid for in dollars sitting in reserves. So without that plan, I would also beg a little bit to differ that staff cautions that we need some, but we haven't got to that point of deciding what method we're even going to use to pay for future assets.
Wendy, did you have something to add in response?
Yeah, I guess my comment would be, we know that the new arena is on the forecast, and we know for water and wastewater, there's big expansions there, anywhere from 30 to 12 million. We don't have that in reserves. And so that's my caution, to use reserves and pay as you go, because we can't afford to pay as you go on those two projects.
Okay, anything further on that note, Councillor Bain?
No, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Rose.
I guess it comes down to two different ways of looking at it. You can be proactive, which I think is what Wendy and the staff is saying in a nice way. Build for the future, or you wait until it comes and then you become reactive. And we've talked about this in the past, trying to keep everything low, and that the public will understand if it goes up 10 or 15%, because we kept it low, and then they'll forgive us. And I don't think that's the way it's going to work. Our job, from what I understand, is to budget and to have more consistency. Maybe get a little more here so we don't have to be as rough later on. I'm not saying either way is wrong. It's just two different ways of looking at it.
Go ahead, Wendy, please.
My response to that would be, it's easier to save $1,000, save a little bit at a time than coming up with $1 million or $2 million. And so contributions to reserves help with that. And it does kind of level out your highs and lows. Doesn't mean you have to be fully funded for the project, but having something there, especially with the bigger projects, gives you a bit of grace, especially times when we don't know what the interest rates are going to be. And if we had to borrow for any big projects, we're subject to whatever that rate is that year.
One thing I wanted to add earlier, but I'll add it now. The 2023 budget impacts report that Wendy offered earlier. I would ask counselors to keep that report handy and reference that throughout the year upcoming, so that when we receive the quarterly budget updates, we can refer back to this memo that we received and use this memo as the gauge when our costs come in, and see how we're doing and see the impacts listed on that report. See if those impacts are still prevalent in this year or not. That will help give us a better sense of our overall position that Councillor Fournier is referring to and Councillor Rose is referring to. Use it as a measuring stick going forward in some respects. Anyone else with any comments or questions at this point?
If I could again, Deputy Mayor Trentowski.
Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I would respectfully disagree with Councillor Rose that we have gotten in trouble in the past using reserves. Each year we've used tax stabilization or the working reserve, we've replenished them with the accumulated surplus. So I would disagree that we've gotten in trouble using them because we have always put more back in than we have ever taken out as the reserves have grown every year that I have been on council. But without knowing what our accumulated surplus this year is going to be, it's another unknown. It just makes the decision a little bit more difficult again this year. So I'd lean to option 3 or 4, 3 like Councillor Duck, or option 4 if there was some more appetite for that.
Okay, Councillor Fournier, did you have something?
Just one final question. If we don't increase to 8.99 this year, we do have a subdivision for 100 homes coming along. When do we expect them to be inhabited? When are they going to start paying property taxes? I mean, if that's 2 years from now or a year and a half from now, that could significantly impact the tax rate that we choose today.
Anyone from staff wish to reply? Wendy?
I would say by time it gets through MPAC and the lots get sold and everything gets built, you're probably looking a good 3 years before we see it on the tax side. Like, so the people could actually be living in the homes, but they're still being assessed as a lot, which might be only a couple $100 for the year. And so it does take some time for the building to be put on the property and be assessed. So we do monitor them because after 3 years, we can't capture that revenue. So we do monitor when subdivisions come, so we can make sure we're capturing those revenues.
Thank you again.
My only comment, and I'll try and keep my comments limited as possible as chair, but with regards to new subdivisions, etc., they haven't been built yet. So kind of seeing is believing. Once the houses are there and occupied, as Wendy points out, only then can the municipality realize any return. Until then, that's revenue that currently does not exist on the books. Wendy, did you have something? Oh. Go ahead, CEO Brick. Thank you.
Thank you, Dean. I agree that, and just on assessment, I think it's a bit of an art as much as it is a science about when the assessment will come online, and certainly growth helps. As you've seen in our budget this year, growth helped with about 3%. That's the difference between the assessment or the levy amount and the tax amount. And a municipality that we can often look to see what our future is going to look like in North Perth, where they've had a considerable additional amount of growth. I think the difference for them is about 6%. So now, mind you, as that growth comes on and those new roads get built, the moment that asset gets built and comes to our books, we then have to plan for its depreciation. And so a new municipal subdivision with the roads and the sewers and the water that are in the roads comes also with the obligation to plan for its eventual replacement. And so there are costs, and this really underlies the need for a 10-year capital plan, because in an environment with pretty steady growth, in an environment with pretty stable staffing, we've been able to get by without that 10-year capital plan. But as we've seen over the last few years, our changes that are being presented to us in the growth side and our changing human resources environment, complicating that, and the unknowns of provincial legislation change, we can model this stuff out as much as we can. There's still going to be unknowns. And a 10-year capital plan is probably the minimum. And my closing comments for council on the report is that staff are recommending scenario 2 with the bin fees to somewhat offset scenario 1. We're recommending that on the basis that we think that's the right number. We recognize that it's difficult for council to see a number that big, but I would also remind councillors that 2 years ago, in the absence of information, we did a 0 when we should have probably did a 5. And that money was left on the table at that point in time. And when you look at our tax increases over 3 years with the real information that we have today, it's a much more modest number. It's just that last year's increase of 3.5 on the tax and the year before of essentially 0, or I think it was 0.9, almost 1. We're now paying for those 2 lower years, and it wasn't an error by council. It was just that we didn't have the information that we now have. And the 10-year capital plan will help us in the future. And I can assure you, if Mike Kramer was here, he would remind you that we have really gutted our capital program for 2023, and we need to bring our roads capital projects back online in 2024. We've got the deferral of the gas tax, which will help ease that burden for the first year, but we have more work to do than just this 8.46% increase. And I'm just saying to council, staff will do what council directs, but we recognize these are tough decisions, but we're recommending scenario 2.
Councillor Duck, go ahead, please.
CEO Brick, is it not scenario 1 that you guys are recommending by the notes here? Staff's recommendation is to increase the levy by $1,083,348 for an increase the levy of 11.85% and a tax rate increase of 8.99%.
That's correct. But with the report, it brings it down to option 2. And since you guys agreed the option or the bins was a good idea, then option 2 is staff's recommendation then.
Okay, I'll Councillor Rose and then Councillor Fournier after that.
I guess it's just a bit of rebuttal. I agree with Jeff. I like the idea of being proactive, which is, I believe, what Jeff was saying, instead of being reactive. You have a little more now because we know what's coming down, later on. So I agree with what Jeff was saying.
Okay, Councillor Fournier, you're next.
Councillors Duck and Rose already said what I was going to say. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Vink, do you have anything at this time?
No, thank you, Dean.
Okay, Mayor McKenzie, go ahead, please.
Well, I'm lacking former councillor Mike Tam here tonight to lobby with me. But one of the more common complaints, if you want to call it that, and I guess it's a nice feeling, but from the rural people, I got more complaints this past year on the amount of gravel that we're putting on the roads instead of not putting enough on. And I don't know if anybody else has had that feedback or not, but I know certainly that was a pet peeve of Mike Tam, and I've had the same comments. And I was looking here for what we're spending on gravel, and I don't know if we could save a little bit there this year on rural gravel. I've talked to Mike about it, and it's unfortunate he's not here tonight to comment on it. And I know he says there's some roads that he does put more on than others. And I must travel all those roads because, you know, shortly after the gravel goes on, you know, it's on there fairly thick. The other comment I'll throw out here right now, and you know, if you want to discuss it, that's fine. And if you don't, that's fine too. You know, we're almost into April here now, and we're working on the budget. The only other area or one thing that we could maybe do, and it won't even save us 0.5%, it would be about 0.3 or 0.4% if we forego the communications person until next year. And it would just mean that the department heads would have to communicate themselves to get that word out there. And I just throw that out. I'm not saying that that's an answer. You know, it's just out there.
Councillor Foster, go ahead, please.
I can speak that me and Brick both got chewed out about line 18.
That's with respect to the gravel. Okay, any other comments or anything anyone wants to add at this time? Okay, so I'll add one more set of observations. I was at the spring forum for the Perth County Federation of Agriculture, and the different commodity groups presented their overview of their respective segments of the ag industry. And this was in conjunction with our local MP and MPP. And the common theme was that good news and bad news, plenty of opportunities in the ag sector, but equally plenty of pressures on the ag sector. And that that was a common theme, and I would dare say that there's pressure on other economic sectors of the business community in West Perth. So when we make our decision, we want to keep those thoughts in mind as well. So at this point, any further thought on Mayor McKenzie's suggestion about the communications position, either from council or staff? Councillor Duck.
I'd like to see that position left in there. I think that adds a lot of value, and for the amount it would save each individual person, I think there's more value to having it and keeping our constituents aware of what's going on through social media and other things like that this person will be looking after. So I believe that we should keep that role in there.
Councillor Fournier, go ahead.
I entirely agree with Councillor Duck on this issue. As far as I can tell, this position came about as a result of all the work that we did on the upcoming strategic plan. It'd be a shame to cancel the work that we already did.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Because I think where we're headed now is decision time. So we've talked through various details of scenarios 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we've had a pretty robust discussion. So now we get down to the finer strokes here of making a decision on which scenario we want to pick. We have four scenarios laid out before us, or we can opt to modify any one of those 4. So I'm going to open the floor up to a motion to which scenario we want to adopt. Councillor Rose.
I make a motion that we adopt number 2, which is what staff is recommending.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rose. Is there anybody that's willing to second that motion? Councillor Phelps. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded, so I will open that motion up for discussion. First call for discussion. Counselor Foster.
We're good. I'd like to say that I believe our money, if we keep it in the hands of our citizens over us, they're going to be as responsible with it as they can be, and they're going to make the best decisions they can going forward. So I would be thinking that if we can reduce it more to option 3, along with what lines with what Duck said and with what Vink said earlier, would be what I would be leaning towards, because I think leaving money in the hands of our citizens is one of the most responsible activities we could do.
Okay, so are you proposing an amendment to the motion, or what are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting we go with 3 instead. But it's already.
But
been
the
moved.
motion is for
So I'd be
option 2.
motioning against it. I don't know.
So,
I'm
so
there.
at this point, you're voicing your opposition to the motion. Okay. What, go ahead, Clerk
I'm not
Hobson.
I
very good.
think you got it. I'll just clarify is that when there was a call for motions, motion 3 is what you should have put forward.
I'll just add, I mean, motion 2 is on the floor, so I think you have to make a decision on motion 2 before you do an amendment to it, which is good governance. And so I think it's before you, and then Clerk Hobson is trying to figure out about our member that's not here about how he'll vote. Have you? In the meantime, perhaps you can administer Deputy Mayor Jankowski if there's any more questions on the motion that's on the floor.
Okay, any questions on the motion? Councillor Phelps? Yeah, go ahead.
Just speaking to, I agree with Murray. We're better off being prepared. We're doing no capital expenses this year. We had 0%, 2% when it should have been 4 and 5. We're kind of falling behind here. And at the arena, we're driving a 1973 over there. We're not even sure if it's going to keep going. Like, the arena is 50 years old, and they've been doing testing to see if there's ammonia leak. And if it goes, there's going to be something we haven't even talked about or planned that's going to be expensive, no matter if it's a repair, replacement, or whatever. And I just feel, yes, it is tough times, but being a good steward of the municipality, we want to keep our services where we are. We're behind on the garbage bins. And I feel that Wendy and the staff have gone over this and gone over this and gone over this tirelessly and come up with the best option. And I truly believe too, even though it's not pleasant, but it, I think, is the best solution, or we're going to start getting behind.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Phelps. Where am I at here? I think I was in the middle of the second call, so I'm going to make a third call for any further discussion on the motion that's before the floor, which is to adopt budget scenario 2. Tax rate increase of 8.46%. What will be the net effect tax rate, please, Wendy?
You mean with the county and education?
Yeah, with county and education and the growth incorporated into that scenario, please.
I just need a second to calculate that.
Go ahead, take your time.
And I'm not sure if the county has passed yet or not, if it's still draft.
Clerk Hobson, can you clarify how we're going to visualize and confirm Councillor Vink's vote, being that he's on remote right now?
I can vote if you can see me with my hand here, and I'll vote yay if I'm in favor, and nay if I'm not.
There you are. Great. We can see you. Perfect. The wonders of technology.
Just for clarification, that's the 50,000 for garbage bins.
Wendy, would you need a couple minutes? We can go into recess while you calculate that, or are you almost there? Okay, well, we'll hang on then.
I had it all set, but I don't have my mouse, so it's like a little trickier without a mouse. to be honest. Okay, so if I could share my screen, then you guys could see the impacts. So I just plug this in? Or is that going to change the technology?
I think we'll take a short recess while Wendy gets the number for us and is ready to present it. So we'll adjourn momentarily at 7:53 PM and aim to reconvene at 7:58 sharp. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Councillor Vink, are you back with us?
Yep, I am.
Okay, so we'll reconvene out of recess at 8:05 PM. So Wendy, under scenario 2, before I call the vote, could you please give us what the revised numbers will look like, please, in terms of percent increase and overall levy as well?
Okay, so scenario 2 makes our municipal levy at $10,174,440. And so comparing that from last year to this year, it'll be an increase to our taxes as 8.46. The county rate would be 6.52. There's 0 increase for school board, so 0. So the overall net increase would be 6.65 for taxes.
Okay, thank you. So now, that is what we will be, when I call the vote, that's what we're voting, making the vote upon. So now I need to ask Clerk Hobson to put Councillor Vink back on the screen before I call the vote.
Sorry, Chair, just Wendy, could you identify the levy increase percentage, or did I miss that? I just heard the tax rate account. Just the motion has the levy and tax rate in it?
Yep, so give me 1 second.
And then maybe Hannah, while she's doing that, you could switch over.
My eyes aren't that good, so give me 1 second.
Oh, she's right.
So it would be a levy increase of 11.30.
3?
11.30 levy increase and 8.46 tax rate increase.
Thank you. And Councillor Vink is back.
Okay, so we have a motion before us. Clerk Hobson, could you just repeat the motion one more time before I call the vote?
That the Council of the Municipality of West Perth approve the 2023 operating and capital budgets with a total levy requirement of $10,174,440, which results in a levy increase of 11.3% and a tax rate increase of 8.46%, and direct staff to prepare the budget bylaw. The motion's been moved by Councillor Rose and seconded by Councillor Phelps.
Okay, so I will call the vote at this time. Those in favor of the motion as presented, please raise your hands. Those opposed? The motion is carried as read. Thank you. So, thank you very much to staff and to councillors for your work, time and consideration on this, the 2023 budget. It's always a challenge every year to sort these details out. But the work has only started. We have the budget in place, but now the work to adhere to that budget and manage that budget going forward has just begun. So once again, thank you everybody for your time and consideration. And at this point, I will turn the meeting over back to Mayor McKenzie.
Okay, thanks, Dean. So carrying on with the rest of the agenda then.
Sorry, can I just interject just for some housekeeping? We just bounced around on the reports a little bit, and if we could just receive the 2 for information through the budget 6.73 and yeah, and 6.7.2, and
Okay.
we can do it in one.
Mayor Dean. We'll just do it? Okay, all right. So, item 6.7.3, the recommendation that council municipality accept budget changes from January the 30th, 2023 as information. And then 6.7.4, is that the one you want? Oh, 2, sorry. The other one is that the council municipality of West Perth accept the 2023 budget impacts report as information. And those are the 2 reports that Wendy gave us. So do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor O'Donnell, seconded by Councillor Duck. Discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. So it brings us down to 6.8, and the rest of the next few items are clerk's information. So Dan, I'll let you take it away. The first one is 2022 council remuneration.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just following up from direction from last meeting, we just brought forward a report with a bylaw below in the bylaw section where we're looking to amend and clean up council's remuneration policy. We have some adjusted rates in here as directed from council. That would be following the Warden Up to Grow report, and that would be based on it's a 2020 report, but it's based on 2018 figures. Sorry, did I jump ahead? I did jump ahead. Sorry, so this is a report I'm bringing back from the last meeting now that the treasurer is here, and we've had a chance to review the remuneration report amounts from last year. And we've confirmed all the numbers and identified some of the conferences and conventions amounts, included the orientation of council, and you'll see some additional changes in there from municipal day attendance is the other minor discrepancy that was asked about. If there's any questions on this report, myself or the treasurer would be happy to answer them.
Okay, any questions for Dan on that? All right, the recommendation is that municipality of West Perth accept the 2022 council remuneration report as information. We'll move in second for that. Councillor Rose, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. And then the next one is council remuneration again. Yeah, the new one.
Thank you. You can hit me next time I go off track. So this was what I was speaking to previously. Council had directed staff to bring forward a new council remuneration bylaw. And frankly, it's needed. The current policy is quite out of date. It's not clear, and it's been amended by some resolutions here and there. So I think getting everything in one succinct location is key, and that's the main driving force behind this. And as well, just adding clarity and getting the rates on a piece of paper. So again, as previously stated, this is a rates from a 2022 review, and it's based on 2018 figures, and council had directed us to use the median. I've identified in the financial section, it works out across the board to about $900, and that's an all-in, so that would include EI and CPP. In practice, though, I'll just highlight that the mayor and deputy mayor's salaries have gone up a little more than the percentage of the councillors have gone up. So if anyone's checking the math on that, that's a total change. If there's any questions on the bylaw or the amounts, I'd be happy to answer them.
Questions on that? No? Okay. So the recommendation is that the council municipality of West Perth receive, and I'm going to insert in here 2023 council remuneration report. Would that be okay? And then we don't get confused with the other one. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Duck, Councillor Fournier. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. And the next item, community grants. Dan, take it away again.
Thank you. So we're reporting back to council on our recommendations for the community grants policy and program. We are within budget, slightly under budget, and I'll just include there's a little bit left over for kind of one-offs where administration has authority for those low amounts to authorize throughout the year, swim passes, etc. We've had conversations with most of the organizations here, and it's largely based on what we'd identified from financial need through the organization, and as well as looking towards priority for West Perth assets. I would like to just go on the record saying I think they're all great organizations to the community and great projects. But unfortunately, as we just went through a budget discussion, we're all aware of the situation. If there's any questions about them or the conditions, I'm happy to answer them, or as always, I will specify that council can change this and add any condition or remove any condition they want.
Okay, comments on Dan's community grants? I guess it's our community grants, but Dan did the report. Okay. I guess we'll go through it and we'll just do, well, each one's listed and we'll just go through it and it's one motion for the whole works, right?
That'd be our preference.
Yep. Okay. So if there's no questions, comments or anything, the recommendation is that we approve the following donation amounts subject to the condition as noted. And Mitchell Sports, 6,700. And the condition is with a new memorandum of understanding with the municipality. Broadhaven Chamber of Commerce, 7741. And that they enter into a new facility use agreement with the municipality. Cromarty Ballpark, 4350. And again, these same conditions that they enter into a new facility use agreement with the municipality. Fullerton Centennial Park Board, 4,500. And that the park board enter into a new facility use agreement with the municipality. The Egg Society, 2,500. The high school, 2,400. Opal, 500. Optimus Club, 300. St. Clement Soccer, 500. And the Kin Club, 500. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Duck and Deputy Mayor Tronkowski. Just before we vote on that, you want to explain what the facility use agreement would be involved?
Yeah, we're just looking to clarify basically who's responsible for what under each agreement. And I know Darcy's here, so if I muck this up, you can come up here and help me. But essentially, if there's capital upgrades, who's responsible? What's the process for going about that? As we noted pretty early on in this process, I think a lot of the requests are coming for upgrades from user groups of our facilities, and there are also the user groups that, for the most part, maintain and care for our facilities. So we're just looking to formalize that and identify the process of how we actually go through. I guess the Fullerton Park Board's a great example. It's likely not in our best interest to just put up new lights this year, as we've provided some clarity in the report. There's a bit of a process to go through that, and we need to make sure that those lights standards are structurally sound and capable of housing the new lights before going through there. So just getting those processes in motion and clear for everyone.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Okay, so it's been duly moved and seconded. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Brings us down to the next one, 6.9, and Jeff, you want to talk about this again?
Sure. I just want to say that council, by virtue of approving the budget the way you did, de facto approved this resolution, but I would ask that council approve the recommendations in the report formally, as this will put in force or put in place a couple of subsequent actions to implement the intention of council. So the recommendation is that council of the municipality of West Perth approve the adjustment of the volume-based West co-collection bin fee rates in 2023 to $120 a year for the 35-gallon bin, $170 a year for the 65-gallon bin, and $220 a year for the 95-gallon bin, and that council direct staff to bring back to council an amended fees and charges bylaw to reflect the adjusted bin rates.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Okay, do we have a mover and seconder for that FERC report? Moved by Councillor Rose, seconded by Councillor Harold. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Correspondence, the 2023 Perth Children's Water Festival. Hannah, you want to put a plug in for it?
Good evening, your worship and council. This memo was just provided to make council aware of the event, the Perth Children's Water Festival that's happening in Mitchell, the last Sunday of May, the 28th from 1 to 4 p.m. It's a joint collaborative effort between members of the community, members throughout Perth County, the Health Unit, and Upper Thames River CA. So our operations department will be there to help describe how our water system works here in Mitchell, but then also how people get water and use water in the rural areas as well. So it's going to be an amazing event, and I hope that you all can attend. It's not just for children, it's for families and adults alike. Everyone can learn something from it.
Okay, thanks, Hannah. I know I have attended one in the past, and I'm not sure, the one I attended was in Huron County, it was in Seaforth. So is this the same? Like, is it here in Perth?
It's the same style of event that happens in Perth County. They actually do them in London, Middlesex as well. They're a very well-known represented event. We've had them here in Mitchell before as the Egg and Water Festival as kind of a collaborative event. This year, so it used to be a school-based event where they would bus kids in during a school day, but the steering committee has moved to more of a family-oriented event. They find that it's good to educate the children, but also the parents, and it's great for water users to know how their water is treated and before and after use, and also how to be conservative with water and how fragile our water systems are.
Good, thank you. Any questions for Hannah? She's on the steering committee, so we got an in here. So Councillor Fournier.
It says here the organizers is soliciting for donations to help fund and operate the festival. Now, obviously, I would like at some point some more information about exactly how you do that. But I do want to bring to your attention, there are at least 2 community action committees, community involvement committees, and with local industries here in town. One at Lactalis recently formed, and one over at Fatis Incorporated, which used to be Durasol. If you could possibly forward this donation request to Fatis at the very least, but I'd recommend both of them. I'd really appreciate that.
Thank you for the recommendation. Yes, our steering committee is going to be going to many of the members of our community and businesses to ask if they'd like to be a part of the event, whether that's donating or having a booth. And so those are good leads. Thank you.
Specifically in regards to Fatis, if you could forward that email to me, because that's the committee that I'm chairing that is at that company. So thank you.
Oh, sorry, Doug.
Will you stick that in our calendar?
Yes.
I can do that. I have those powers.
Yeah. Yep, no, that works good when you get the reminders there and they come up. Okay, so we have a recommendation here then that the Council Municipality of West Perth accept the correspondence as information. We have a mover and seconded for that, Councillor Duck, and who have I got here? Councillor Chessel. All those in favor? That is carried. We do have a few bylaws here. Bylaw number 10 is bylaw to provide drainage works for the Morello Municipal Drain. Bylaw 11 is drainage works for the Snyder's Colkman. Bylaw 12 is the remuneration. Bylaw 43 is drainage works for the Schellenberger drain, and that would be the 3rd reading on that one. And zoning bylaw 279 is a bylaw to replace bylaw 100, which is the property in Fullerton that we dealt with for the Reed property. The recommendation is, and I got to make sure I get this right, because one gets 2 readings and one gets just the 3rd reading. Council Municipality of West Perth give 1st and 2nd reading to bylaw 10, 11, 12, zoning bylaw 279 this 20th day of March. So that's first and second reading. We have a mover and seconder for that, please. Counselor Phelps, Deputy Mayor Trnkowski, all those in favor? That is carried. And then third and final reading to bylaw 12, 46 and zoning bylaw 279. So third and final reading. Did I miss one? 43, what did I say? 40? I thought I did. Yeah, 43, sorry. So it's bylaw 12, 43, and zoning bylaw 279. So we have a mover and seconder for that. Counselor Rose, Counselor O'Donnell, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that is carried. Okay, special council meeting coming up next Monday night on the 27th. And then the essentials of municipal fire protection on the 29th. Yes, I have that one. It's, well, the one on Thursday for Erie Thames. Who is all going to that? So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there's 7 of us going. Couple Carlos? Yeah. Are they? Oh, okay.
We can work it out after the meeting. We'll just arrange carpool.
Yeah, we might as well. So is anybody else going to the essentials of fire protection? You are going, so we could go together for that. if you want. Yeah, all right, okay, good. All right. Oh, sorry, Dean?
Thanks, your worship, if I may. Thursday, March the 23rd, after you're powered up at the Earth Breakfast, you can, you're invited to, everyone's invited to attend. It's the landowner, I'll say it again, rural landowner workshop, sponsored by Upper Thames River Conservation Authority. Thursday, March the 23rd from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. That's being held at the Crystal Palace on Wellington Street. And it will deal with topics of conservation, soil conservation, water quality, tying into what Hannah presented about the Children's Water Festival, soil health. So there'll be a lineup of guest speakers addressing those topics for the public. Thank you.
Good, thanks, Dean. Any other coming events anybody wants to mention? All right. Don't have any notice of motions that I'm aware of. Any other business at this time? We don't have a closed meeting that I'm aware of. So the only other couple other things we have is the one is the confirmatory bylaw number 13, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council and the corporation of the municipality of West Perth be read a first and second time. We have a mover and seconder for that. Counselor Phelps, Counselor Rose, all those in favor? That is carried. And bylaw 13 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the corporation of the municipality of West Perth be read a third time and finally passed 20th day of March. We have a mover and seconder for that. Counselor O'Donnell, Counselor Foster, all those in favor? That is carried. And finally, a motion to adjourn at, well, I gotta see the time here. Oh, there we are. Yeah. 8:28 p.m. We have mover seconder for that. Counselor Harold, Counselor Phelps, all those in favor? That is carried and we are adjourned. Thank you.